Welcome back, Purrfect Peeps, to Purrfect.dev. Today we're talking about building design systems with Backlight.dev. One quick note, we had some issues on the demo for this podcast, so we threw it over to Sirens Streams, which is part of the Svelte Society, and Brittany continues the whole demo with Mads over there. I'll put the link in the description, so make sure you check it out. Welcome back, peeps, to Purrfect.dev, where we give you cats the freshest dose of dev snacks. Now with your amazing hosts, Alex Patterson and Brittany Postma. This episode is sponsored by Builder.io. Visually build on your tech stack. What's up, Mads?
Hey, I'm fine. How are you?
Doing great. So Mads is a developer advocate at divRIOTS, and Mads,
divRIOTS.
Yes, I always get it wrong. divRIOTS.
divRIOTS, yeah.
In
like
the
actual,
yeah,
element.
get a tag.
We need to include the angle brackets in there. divRIOTS.
Less than, div, greater than, riots.
The ally version.
Okay, sorry, I'm way off on a tangent here. Mads, can you tell us just a little bit about your background and how you kind of got involved with divRIOTS and became an advocate? Like your whole history, basically. Maybe not childhood, but past that.
Yeah, sure. Maybe not the whole story because it's gonna be probably too long, but yeah, I'm a developer advocate at divRIOTS. I'm a former front-end developer. I worked on various front-end technologies, from basic HTML, CSS, and JavaScript to advanced framework for almost 10 years, something like that. And I moved to the developer advocacy part 4 years ago, just because I love front-end development, but I'm not a 10x engineer, and I'm probably better to entertain people and explaining new trends, new stuff, new technologies. So the developer advocacy is definitely a good thing for me.
I'm always interested to hear what people's opinions are of what a developer advocate is and what you do day to day. What does your job kind of entail?
Oh, I guess it depends. It depends on the company you're working on and your different projects. Because at divRIOTS we're still a small team. We're 15 people, so it's not a really big company. I'm the only developer advocate right now. So my time is split between working on articles or new contents, producing demos, giving a lot of talks, and since the beginning of the pandemic, we are probably most focused on producing video content, so Twitch sessions or podcasts or things like that.
Awesome.
So yeah, it's definitely dedicated to producing learning material and just trying to give people new things to learn and to understand.
So content creation maybe around the company you work for.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Gotcha. Definitely.
Can you tell us a little bit more about like Backlight.dev and what we're looking at there?
Yeah, sure. So divRIOTS is a small team of people dedicated to the front-end ecosystem, and most of the people working in the company, especially the founders, are coming from the back side, so coming from the back end, from PHP, Python, Ruby, and so on. But they were really frustrated by the way it wasn't that easy to work on a proper front-end ecosystem with a good tooling, or at least something really dedicated to improving the communication between the different parts of the front-end team. So not only front-end developers, but also designers, product owners, documentation producers, and so on. And so they started to think about it, and finally came the idea that we could have a toolkit as most advanced as the designers want. Like they have really good design tools like Figma, Sketch, or something like that, but we miss those kind of tools on the developer side. So this is exactly the mission of Backlight, which is having an editor dedicated to the design system specifically, and where you could code and craft your component for your design system, working on your tokens, working on your documentation, your test, and so on. Everything integrated, so you could easily deliver it to the rest of your team and communicate and collaborate around the design system with every part of your front-end team.
Cool.
I love that you're integrating every little piece, and every person kind of has their part of it, so they can do everything in one tool, because right now it's so split. And that's a problem people keep saying about the Jamstack too, is that it's nice to have all these best in class things, but they're all over the place, and everything needs to kind of come back together at some point. And that's really cool that they're addressing that issue. Can you actually talk about some of the struggles that they experience when like starting tooling for the front end, like the design system? Why was that a struggle, and what is Backlight doing to address those issues? What specific things?
Yeah, the fact you are focusing on design system is exactly the cornerstone of your front end toolkit and your front end process to produce your final interfaces. Just because I guess everyone could produce a design system. This is just a bunch of components and collection of components that you could easily share with the rest of your teammates and so on. But it's not that easy to produce a design system from scratch. It involved a lot of work, probably months of work for a dedicated team to produce every components and improve them and just plug them and just finally grain them and develop them. So it's not always that easy to produce it from scratch. And the fact is, if you want to collaborate with all the rest of the people involved in the design system, the designers, product owners, people doing documentation, and so on, it's a lot of work too. So you could do it, and there is teams that are dedicated to design system in different companies, but there are always dedicated teams to the design system in big companies, and not all companies and not all projects can do that because it's just too much of work. So this is exactly what Backlight is dedicated to, which is a way to quickly bootstrap a design system, probably from an existing one, something based on a design system made by Shopify or by Adobe or something like that. And you could easily build your own by just bootstrapping an existing one and improving it for your brand, for your company, your dedicated product, and so on. You could also build it from scratch, of course, but the idea is to produce a tool that every team could use to just facilitate and quickly bootstrap that project.
So you're saying you could use another component library that's out there, like Carbon, IBM's design system, pull it in, and then you could configure it to what your company's brand design system is within Backlight pretty easily?
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome.
This is exactly the idea. In fact, we decided to produce a lot of starter kits just to help people to just jump into the platform and start to understand it and working with it by just picking a design system that is compatible with their needs in terms of stacks or technologies, and so they could right now starting to work in it and craft new content and produce even a small demo of a new design system.
Does it work with specific frameworks? Like, is it only React, or is it Vue, or does it matter?
It's totally agnostic, so you can work with every kind of technology that you want.
This might be a good time. I'll bring up the main site.
Yeah, good idea.
Here, let's see here. There we go. So this is kind of Backlight.dev. And it has all of these kind of Kickstarters.
Yeah.
And I opened 2 of them up just to check it out. And of course, I had to open up. I won't say why, but I had to open up the Svelte example first. Here.
Brittany. Are you doing that for me?
Yeah. I know you had an early morning.
To be totally honest, I'm responsible of this one. So because every part of everyone in the company is working on a specific starter kit and maintaining it. So because you can just be compatible with all the front end technologies. So you do have to place your bets at some point and just say, okay, I'm better with this technology rather than this one. I'm better with React rather than Vue or Svelte or so on. So yeah, everyone in the company is picking a new starter kit and is in charge of maintaining it. So I chose the Svelte one.
I would choose Svelte too. I feel so much more comfortable coding in Svelte. It feels so much closer to that vanilla code that I work so well in.
Yeah, I do agree. I really love this technology.
So if we took like this simple example, let's say that you have built out, I don't want to say simple, maybe it's complex. This example you have built out in Svelte, if I were to like use this in my app, do I just download it after I'm done like creating all the UI bits and pieces? Or am I like publishing this out to NPM privately and pulling it into my repo? What's that kind of flow look like?
Okay, this is an interesting question. The fact is, we don't want to lock in anyone in Backlight. Backlight is just a tool to help you to easily have your design system powered, and you could use it to produce it. But there is absolutely no lock-in in terms of technology in it. So you could pick the technology you want, you could use it in Backlight, and everything is in sync with your repository behind it. It's a GitHub repository or a GitLab repository. So we are not injecting any magic in it. This is just a front-end editor finally. And if you want to just at some point go outside of Backlight and just continue with your own stack, you're totally free to do it, because everything that we do is just syncing the editor with your backend repository. So after that, if you want to use your design system in your final application or your final project, because this is the idea behind the design system, is that you could use it across several projects.
Cool.
You could publish it, and you could do it right from the Backlight editor. So we have a release feature that allow you to just publish a package on NPM registry, so you could pull it from NPM to any kind of new project. But there is also a CLI that is available. If you click on the small icon on your right, the antenna one, I'm pretty sure it's this one. Yeah, that's it. If you click on this one, it will on your project. But maybe your because this is just a demo, I'm not sure you could open it. Right now in this one.
It says something about my own components.
Yeah, it will just open a simple pop-up with a command line to just plug in your project, your very own project, and locally it's doing a kind of NPM link from your project to the design system. So your design system is then available right in your project, and you don't have to republish it each time you make a modification, because we often work in parallel with the design system on some point and on the application on the other one, and you're just reverting some changes or roll back some changes in the design system because it doesn't fit in the application. So working on them and being forced to republish the package each time is just a nightmare. So this feature allow you to work on the project on Backlight, working on your design system, and having it directly available in your local project without having to republish it.
Today's podcast is brought to you by Builder.io, visually building the web. Builder.io has one of the most powerful visual editors in the industry. Unlike other tools, Builder actually produces the code for you. You don't have to completely switch out your framework either, just use one of the handy SDKs that are available. There's no limits to what you can build. Instead of limiting your marketing team, start to optimize and let them do the work. This will allow your web developers to get back to the hard work that it takes for other components, allowing your team to do A/B testing and personalization. Stop worrying about bugs in production. Just use the site as it is, then you can analyze and start converting all of your customers. with Builder's built-in heat maps. Stop limiting your growth with developers' long lead times. Start building, optimizing, analyzing, and start growing faster. Don't take my word for it. You can sign up for free today and start building the web visually with Builder.io. Yeah, one of my like next questions was going to be, I see things like stories in here. I was going to be like, I've heard of Storybook, and I'm like, oh, is that like something similar? But then I
That
noticed
is Storybook.
Yeah, I noticed the little icon. That's a Storybook story, right?
Exactly.
It feels like there's a couple maybe technologies going on here. Is VS Code embedded in this somehow as well, or is it just a different editor?
It's not exactly VS Code. It's Monaco, which is the engine, the text engine rendering the editor in VS Code. But because we didn't want to have some complexity on the server, and we wanted everything working in the browser exclusively, we didn't embed the whole VS Code editor. We just choose Monaco and we rebuilt an editor around it, and everything is working on the browser. So when you open Backlight, the Backlight editor in your browser, everything is working in the browser, even the rendering parts, even the stories, even the documentation, everything is rendered into your browser, and nothing occurs on the server except for the storing the database. So so this is it was a really challenging, because from a technical point of view, we're using Vite to produce any kind of rendering processes. So we forked the Vite project to port it to the service workers, so we are able to render the Vite process directly into the browser. And this is just awesome because it's crazy. Yeah, exactly.
It is. I just recently found out about Monaco in general, and I think Gitpod maybe is using Monaco too. And it's such a cool project. And it's crazy to me that all that can just be run in the browser.
Yeah, definitely. And really, in terms of open source ecosystem and open source project, we're really thankful to Microsoft and Monaco to be released in open source, because having to redevelop an editor from scratch, this is just insane. Yeah. So
I just happened to pull up because we were talking about it, and I noticed there's a certain sponsor down here at the bottom right. So looks like divRIOTS is sponsoring Vite as well.
Yeah, we're trying to sponsor as much open source project as we could, just because we are producing an editor, we are producing open source projects too, but we are also using a lot of open source projects in our final product. So it does make sense to support any kind of open source project that we use.
Absolutely, that's really cool. I was gonna ask too, like typically when we're working with designers, they're usually working in like Figma or Sketch or something like that. That's usually like the starting point. Even like in consultancy, what we often do is go to a client, show a wireframe, they'd click through it all and be like, yes, we'll pay $1 million, make this. And so taking that over into Backlight, what does that kind of process look like?
Yeah, right now we've got the main idea in Backlight is to be able to gather every part of your design system. So not just only the code, but also everything related to it. So it involved the designs file, it involved the documentation, the stories, test files, and so on. So right now we don't want to replace any kind of prototyping software like Figma or Sketch. They're really, really good product if you want to just make some tests, push something, get them. And we thought that in the past, prototyping in the browser is not that easy as it seems. Even if we got all the technologies, I don't know anyone that is really doing that. We are not prototyping in the browser because it needs too much code to do it. So so working with Figma and Sketch is pretty fine when you want to prototype your interface. And then after that, in Backlight, we could link for each component your element, your component to the design file. So we've got I'm not sure. I will show you in a few times if you want.
Yeah,
But
Yeah, absolutely.
I was going to say if we could like pull up our Figma files and see if we could link like some of the design system that's in
Yeah.
Figma.
I know kind of just a visual on the front page. This is somewhat of what we're talking about. So you can take your Figma like buttons that you've created and in the design link out to that. That's essentially what we're looking at, right?
Yeah, exactly. The fact is, it's always painful if you are implementing a new element. You are working on a button and you're saying, okay, I know I have to compare my implementation to the design file, and you have to dig into the design, all the design system in the Figma library to just be able to find the button and have it. And so
and try to search because it's impossible to find anything ever.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. So our company does that too, where like the designers will work in Sketch or Figma, and then they will put documentation in another program called ZeroHeight. And then as developers, we go to ZeroHeight and we have to look at that, and then we have to code it. So it's like a very disjointed, we don't even have access to those original Figma files. So it's a very disjointed process, and Backlight seems like it's kind of just bringing all that stuff to one place, which is kind of nice. But it's also code-driven development, right? So you're developing the code before having even the documentation sometimes.
Yeah, the idea is I do like ZeroHeight because it is bringing the documentation at the heart of the design system, which is really cool because if you don't have the relevant documentation for every part of your design system, you don't know how to use it, and this is just not that what we want to do because we just have collaborators that aren't aware that there is an implementation or a specific variation for their needs, and without a documentation, it's nothing. So because we love the idea behind divRIOTS, we wanted to bring it into Backlight by itself. This is why when you work on a component in your design system in Backlight, you're working on the code, but you're also working on the documentation, and you're also working on the design files. So everything is at the same place. And when you open your button in Backlight, you've got access to the documentation, you've got access to the stories, you've got access to the design file, and you can compare everything, and everything is just ordered properly. So you could easily dig in it, make some tests, play with it, because you've got access to playgrounds, you've got access to props tables, so you could easily work on it.
So let's see if I understand this right. So if a designer was working in Figma, they make the prototype, they link it into Backlight, and then they start working on the documentation. The developer gets in there, starts coding it up. You've got the documentation there. You've got the link to the Figma file. You can see everything just in one place.
Exactly. And because the idea is that this editor is a collaborative one, everyone could collaborate on its specific part. So you're working on the design. Okay, you are responsible to link the design file to the component in Backlight.
Yeah.
You're working on documentation. Okay, let's do the same thing. And this is just a proper shared responsibility across the whole team.
Yeah.
And so not everything is on the shoulders of the developers, and everyone could easily collaborate on the same thing.
Awesome.
That's really cool.
Who is Backlight's target audience? Is it marketers, or is it just developers, or would you just say anyone, because everyone is collaborative, like you said?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, because we can't say, okay, we want everyone in the front-end team able to work on Backlight and collaborate on Backlight, and in the same time saying, okay, so every people in the front-end team is a target of Backlight, because as a designer, we probably don't want to use Backlight to produce design files. This is not the idea behind it. So it's a project that is firstly dedicated to developers, because we think that what we ship to our end users is code. So without saying that the code is a single source of truth, the fact is you never ship designs file to your end user. You're shipping code. So the code is the main part of the editor. So it's firstly dedicated to developers to help them to implement their components of the design system. But because everyone could collaborate on it, once again, it's also for the designers to help them to add comments on the final implementation or see the result in advance, rather than being frustrated at the end of a Scrum process, just having a showcase and everyone is saying, okay, this is exactly not what we wanted, so we have to revamp everything and from scratch. With this idea, everyone could collaborate every day on the same elements.
You don't have to wait on a desk check. You don't have to do everything in your local environment. It's all living there. Anyone can see it at any moment in time.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about that. That's really cool.
And with this idea in mind, we implemented a things in preview in Backlight, which means that you could work on a component and your teammates are working even in another environment, even in another country, on another time zone, can open a link and just have the preview in sync and see your changes in sync. So as a designer, I could have a look on what you are working on with this button, and what are you doing with it, and implementing or giving some comments in real time, and just saying, okay, maybe too small or too large, or
and that
like
helps in the development process and speeding things along too. You're not waiting to ask those questions till the end. You're done and you think everything's fine, and then you notice that there's something wrong with it, and that's really helpful. I like that a lot.
Yeah, we're just also implementing a comments functionality directly into Backlight. So soon, in the next few days, I guess, everyone could be able to add some comments on the components or on the resources, on the documentation, saying, okay, I'm not sure it should work like that, or like you could do in a GitHub issue or a PR or something like that.
So even more collaboration.
Yeah, that's it.
Awesome. I did have one more question for you. I wanted to know if you know anything about, I've heard this term, complexity cliffs. I was listening to Sean Wang talk with Adam Argyle, and they were talking about how components have like so many use cases sometimes that you should really just have more than one component. Like a button can't just be everything that you want it to be. So what are your thoughts on having a component for every use case, or if you just make more components and break them apart?
That's a good question. I guess that regarding of the complexity cliff, which finally just means that a team can handle just a final amount of complexity, and when the complexity is over this limit, your team just can't grow enough to absorb every kind of complexity of your project. So I guess that regarding that, the design system is probably a good answer to this specific problem, because it involved that your issues or your complexity is in your design system rather than your final application. In the cybersecurity, there is a concept that I really love that is called switch left the complexity, which means when you work on a problem and you've got an issue because you've got a new security issue, a new alert, something like that, rather than trying to patch the issue at the end, just switching left the security problem to one step earlier and being able to imagine and to prevent the problem rather than patching them is probably the best thing to do. And I guess that the design system is exactly this answer for the front-end ecosystem, because we had the responsive web design to do, and it was a nightmare. And now we've got still the responsive web design to do, but we also have complexity involved because we've got the 5G, which is really fast and faster than your home connection, but probably less faster than the 4G. So you have to have a mix, adapting your product by saying, okay, you're on a really good device with a 5G connection, so you could handle a big amount of data, but you've got only 5% of batteries, so you could handle this big amount of data, so you have to switch back to a 4G. And we've got issues with different size screens, different bandwidth capacities, different SOC capacities, different batteries, different level of a lot of things. If we just wait for the final product to handle all this use case, it will be a nightmare, and we won't be able to do anything with that. If we shift left this complexity to the design system, and each component is responsible of a part of the complexity, the video player in the design system is responsible to handle the complexity of, do I have a good bandwidth? Do I have enough battery so I could handle this amount of data?
Yeah.
Then when you implement it in your final application, then everything is already dealt with. It's burn into the design system, and you don't have to worry about that. Just having to assemble your final view and your final prototype, and that's on.
It breaks that complexity into those individual pieces, so you get like more simplicity out of the complexity.
Exactly.
Kind of interesting.
Awesome. Well, it sounds like there's a lot of awesome things coming out of Backlight.dev, which it sounds like you're kind of early in the process, so probably working out a lot of like little kinks and things like that, but it sounds like an exciting project for sure.
Yeah, we're still adding some new features. We talked previously about the design files and what we wanted to do with that, and we're working on a project that will be able to link tokens coming from the design files directly into Backlight. So you are a designer, you're working on your design file, you are declaring your tokens in your Figma file, and in the Backlight, you've got access to those tokens declared in the Figma file. So you don't have to re-implement the token directly into your final implementation.
Oh, cool.
Because there is a community group at the W3C that is working on specification for design tokens, and when this specification will be ready, and when Figma will be ready to implement these tokens in the Figma files, then we will be ready to have a design to code process where we could just extract the tokens and push them directly into the design system. Yeah, so
that would be cool.
No more mess to copy paste values and so on. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, with that said, I think we're going to jump into our Purrfect Picks. Yeah. And Mads has actually provided our first one. He said he was catching up on a little TV show here.
Yeah, this is my current TV show. Right after anyone in the world, but I didn't see it before, so I just working hard on it to just go through every seasons. But yeah, it's really a nice show. I really love it.
It's pretty funny.
I personally really loved it. I enjoyed the heck out of it. So Neil Patrick Harris, throughout the many years, still rocking it.
Yeah, then just legendary.
Yeah. Cool. I believe Brittany, you
he threw in the new open props project and the Vite ecosystem in there. I saw those just now.
This is one of the most exciting projects.
We literally just had a podcast with Adam Argyle yesterday about this.
Awesome.
So it should be coming out around the same time, but I'm so excited about this project too.
Yeah. Go check out last week's podcast. It'll be out. Cool.
Awesome.
Perfect. I don't know if we can say much more. And then we talked about Vite, and we have linked to Vite as well. So all great picks. Vite, I know. God. How do I always, I say everything wrong.
I said Vite for a long time because there was that controversy, and now I'm trying to correct myself.
But as a French one, it's really, really useful for us because this is just VueJS and Vite.
Yes.
And this is really, really good.
Fast in French, right?
Yeah, I'm really thankful to Evan to pick those names because it's really easier for us.
That's hilarious. I love it.
Yeah. So is he the CEO? Is George?
Yeah. This is the CEO.
So the CEO of divRIOTS went on Learn with Jason, which is one of the greatest Twitch shows for learning to code ever. And this got me intrigued in this whole Backlight.dev situation. And I wanted to find out more. And it's a really great watch if you want to find out more about divRIOTS and Backlight.dev.
You just brought up something that I forgot to show the viewers at least earlier. If you go to divRIOTS page, they have an About Us section, and this is like every 8-bit version of them.
Yes.
Is that fair to say? So we'll put the link out there, but everyone on their team has a cool, and if you look, Mads is like exactly him. So
it looks exactly like you.
Maybe the hair has a couple more colors in it these days. I don't know.
Yeah, but I change them probably twice a month. So yeah,
okay.
we can stick to a good avatar each time.
That's awesome. Sorry, your second pick.
Oh, my second pick is my talk from Sirens, the first talk that we did, building design systems in SvelteKit. I talk a little bit more about how to do that in SvelteKit and using the SvelteKit package command to package it up and ship it to NPM. Kind of like we were talking about Backlight.dev allows you to put it to NPM, publish it to NPM. I talk a little bit about that and kind of just the way design systems came to be, and maybe we can simplify them a little bit. I did have some audio issues learning how to use StreamYard. Apparently, after using it for a year, I had no idea what I was doing. And so about 3 minutes in is where you want to go to to start the video.
Put those links in, folks.
Yeah, there's a timestamp in there.
And if you haven't been out to Sirens, these bubbles are on purpose. Go click them. They will
go click them, and they pop, and they have a sound.
Cool. My first pick, while I was on a much needed vacation, I listened to Will Smith's new book called Will. It was really interesting. So I basically grew up with Will Smith, on Fresh Prince and like all of that throughout his career, all of his movies and everything else. So it was kind of fun for me to like listen more about him and like hear his life story. And, someone who is basically the biggest movie star, TV star ever, or one of, I guess. Yeah. It's kind of crazy to hear all the struggles he went through and like the things he still goes through today, and kind of, one brick at a time, folks. Like that's the mantra. So check it out. It's really cool. I would recommend getting the audio because he actually does the voice too. So there's a little additive there.
Yeah.
Awesome.
My second pick is, I just kind of switched my pick out, so don't kill me, Brittany. This is office hours with Figma, and they have complex component architecture. So I thought it might be kind of interesting. Like we talked a lot about components and how to create them. This is a whole breakdown that they go through on creating components within Figma that are super complex, which is really cool.
Interesting.
So check that out. I think I could be wrong. I thought they had there is another link for this somewhere of the components they created. I'll try to find it.
Oh, sweet.
But yeah, cool. Well, Mads, thanks so much for coming on the podcast. Really appreciate it. Sounds like you got a lot going on with Backlight.dev in the future.
So, thank you for having me. And let's get in touch for the next features and next updates of Backlight.
Absolutely. We would love to have you back.
Future. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. Thanks so much.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mads. Have a great day.
Yeah, you too. Bye-bye.